we know the Grizzlies have, they're one of the top teams in the Western Conference right now. True. They have 19 wins. True. And they've won the competition that they beat the competition that they played against. But you know what? Who have they beaten, Joe?
What?
Who have they beaten?
Are you saying this is a soft schedule, Damichael?
It's been a soft schedule. And guess what? This is the true indicator right here. This is the game that's going to let us know what this Grizzlies team is about. It's a statement game. Let's talk about it right now. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? You see Joe's pumped. I'm pumped. We've been waiting on this episode. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your co-host, Damichael Cole, joined by the one and only, the hype man himself over there, Joe Mullinax. I was going to give him some time to calm down, but forget all that. Joe, how you doing?
You're going to have the hot take today. I'm excited that you're going to have the hot take. I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue to do the stuff that pays the bills, and then we'll get into your hot take. Go ahead.
Is it really a hot take? It's something that needs to be said. That's what I think it is. And, we've talked about all the things that the Grizzlies have overcame, and it's a lot, right? The Grizzlies have overcome so many things this season to get to this point, to be one of the top teams in the Western Conference, to have, a 19-8 record, to win, 6 games, I believe it is, in a row at this point, season-long win streak. But you look at those wins, and we're going to talk more about this. You look at those wins, especially during the streak. What jumps out to you? You beat the Hawks, who missed 4 starters in that game. The Pistons are the Pistons. The Thunder are the Thunder. The Heat historically have been a good team. They had Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, but they've struggled this season. You beat the Pistons before that. Beat the undermanned 76ers team that was missing James Harden, that was missing Tyrese Maxey, and that's your 6-game win streak. So, it's a two-way street. Yes, you're taking care of the things that are in front of you. Salute to the Grizzlies for that. But, Joe, the teams that they have beaten, none of those teams stand a lick to this team that they're going to play. But before we get to that, we just got to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies once again. Make sure you continue to make Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. As you can see, Joe's pumped. I'm pumped. We appreciate you. We appreciate you for tuning in. We appreciate the rates, the reviews. We appreciate the subscriptions. And make sure you continue to do those things as well. Continue to leave, comments. Let us know what you want us to work on. Let us know what you think about some of the things they're saying. Right now, I'm saying it's been a weak schedule up to this point. If you don't agree with me, you have a chance to say that as well. But just continue to leave, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you find us everywhere. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Locked On Grizzlies is everywhere like the air. Now, Joe, as I was saying, this Bucks team is head and shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
Above what we
one of the best two. I would say it's the Celtics and Bucks and then everybody else.
And the Grizzlies played that Celtics team earlier this season. You want to remind us what happened?
I don't want to go into too much detail, right, but I don't remember it going
maybe well. I'm coming down a little bit too hard right now. Maybe I'm coming down a little bit.
You are coming in hot, my friend.
Joe,
partner, the rose to my thorn. You are coming in hot tonight and today, and whenever you're listening to the show, it's heat. It's heat just exuding from you with these takes. Goodness gracious! Where are you coming from? I like it. Like that's what people don't. If you know me, I'm fired up just because Damichael's joining the dark side. Here we are. I like the energy here. Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and I wrote about it. We talked a little bit about this before we recorded. I did some research. The average record is 12-15 of teams that they've beaten, right? They've beaten more teams with single-digit wins than teams with single-digit losses. And I do think that there's some validity to that. It's not being a hater. It's speaking truth, and that doesn't mean that this Grizzlies team can't compete with the Bucks or the Celtics. And we have to continue to remind everyone that we still don't know how good the Memphis Grizzlies are because they haven't been healthy. This is the healthiest they've been in some time. I think Desmond Bane and help me out, Damichael.
Danny Green.
Thank you, Danny Green. Those are the two that are out for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody else is questionable, doubtful, or they're going to play. So it played out exactly how you and I predicted. Ja and those guys just getting a breather heading into a big game. Shout out to Locked On Grizzlies. But I do think that, this is an opportunity for them to say, we are real. You know what I mean? Like, we are not a team that should be taken lightly when it comes to these contender conversations. Because, again, the Bucks and the Celtics, I think you put in a separate tier. The good news for the Grizzlies is both of those teams are in the Eastern Conference. So they're going to take – one of them is going to take the other out eventually. In the Western Conference, there is no reason why you would pick anybody in front of the Memphis Grizzlies and be definitive about it, if that makes sense. You can have an argument. You can have a debate. I think you can argue for the Pelicans. You can argue for the Warriors, obviously. You can argue for the Suns and the Nuggets. But you can just as easily argue for the Memphis Grizzlies. There's lots of reasons why. This is a game where you can say, nah, screw that. We are the team to beat in the Western Conference, and here is why. Because we, without Desmond Bane, were able to do A, B, and C to the Milwaukee Bucks. And they're going to have multiple attempts at this coming up, right? They have 2 games against the Phoenix Suns. They have the Christmas game against the Warriors. But this is the first one. This is the first chance to kind of stake their claim, plant their flag in the sand, and say, we are the team to beat in the West because we just took out an NBA Finals favorite. It might just be a regular season game in December to the Bucks. I'm not sure it's that to the Memphis Grizzlies.
And it shouldn't be to the Grizzlies. It shouldn't be, because when you hear me say these things about how the schedule has been weak, that's not a shot at the Grizzlies. It's just you
play what's in front of you.
You play what's in front of you, and at the end of the day, you play to win the game. And the Grizzlies are doing that. They're a top seed right now, and they've beaten these teams. And we've talked about it 1,000 times. They've beaten these teams without Ja in games. They've beaten them without, Desmond Bane. They've won games without Jaren Jackson Jr. They're winning games without key players who are big parts of, the identity of this team, not just key role players. These are identity players, at the end of the day. So that's huge. But you mentioned this is a different tier, right? We know what the Grizzlies are capable of. I think the Grizzlies are a championship contender. I'm pretty sure you do too as well, Joe. But if you want to be a championship contender, the Eastern Conference champs from last season were the Celtics. Grizzlies lost to them. The Eastern Conference champs and the NBA champions from 2 seasons ago. And like I like to tell a lot of people, I don't think you lose your crown because of injury. I've never been, that's like Golden State when, Clay and those guys went down. They never lost their crown in my eyes until they're beaten while healthy. It's the same way with the Bucks. Chris Middleton was hurt in the playoffs last year, and they still took the Celtics to 7 games. Healthy Chris Middleton, in my mind, this team still has the crown. So with that being said, you're playing a team that has the respect of everyone in the NBA. Chris Middleton has been back. He missed the beginning of the season. He's been back for a large part now where he's starting to get his minutes up. Drew Holiday is one of the better guard defenders in the game. And the rim protection, we'll talk more about this later in the show. I don't want to get too much into that right now. We're focusing more on this schedule. But that's all it is, Joe. It's a big prove-it, opportunity for the Grizzlies. You're at home. I remember, this is a game where you look on the schedule and you say up to this point, Grizzlies, they haven't played a lot of the top teams. If you look at the top teams in the NBA right now and you go through the top 8 teams, right? You have the Celtics at the top. Grizzlies played 1 game against the Celtics. They played the Pelicans. They played the Pelicans, but what did we see in those Pelicans games? 1 game was without Zion Williamson. The other game, CJ McCollum was out and Brandon Ingram got hurt in the first half. So a couple, injuries happen and the Grizzlies are facing their injuries too. It's not an excuse. It's a realization. Just remember that. And then you keep going down. They haven't played the Nuggets yet, even though that's coming up on the December slate as well. The Cavaliers, that was the 6th team. Haven't played them yet. The Nets did play the Nets. But in my mind, you throw that out the window because that was the Steve Nash coached Nets.
Yeah, they were going through turmoil.
The Jock Vaughn Nets are different. And even I think when the Grizzlies played them early on, I think it was one of his first games as the coach, one of Jacques Vaughn's first game as the coach. They completely turned it around. Then right after that, the 8th team is the Suns. Grizzlies haven't played the Suns yet. Got them 2 times coming up in December. So at the end of the day, Joe, this is a big stretch, and it starts with this game right here. We know what the Grizzlies are capable of, but in order for them to get that respect nationally, it's this type of game that's going to kind of, prove what they bring to the table.
Ric Flair style, baby. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Woo! Right? And it's a big fight feel. I'm with you. You got me fired up for this game, Damichael. I am excited to see what they're going to do. We're going to keep talking about this game. There's a player on the Memphis Grizzlies who has some freakish tendencies, and there's been comps between Jaren and Giannis in the past. So we'll talk about how close we think Jaren is actually to that level of player here in a little bit on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by ExpressVPN. So we all know how ExpressVPN protects your privacy and security online, right? Here's something you might not know. You can also use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are available in other countries. This will change your world. ExpressVPN allows you to binge things like The Office on UK Netflix. It's so simple to do. You just sign into Netflix, fire up the ExpressVPN app, change your location to the UK, refresh Netflix, and that's it. ExpressVPN lets you control where you want sites to think that you're located. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. So just imagine all the Netflix libraries you can go through. You love Korean dramas? Use ExpressVPN to parasite off South Korean Netflix with your Netflix subscription. But it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service. Hulu, BBC, iPlayer, YouTube, you name it, they got it. There are hundreds of VPNs out there. But the reason that you should use ExpressVPN to watch shows is because it is ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering or lag, and you can stream in HD, no problem. ExpressVPN also works on all your devices, phones, media consoles, smart TVs, and more. You can watch what you want on the big screen or on the go. So if you want to get access to hundreds of new shows, go to expressvpn.com/lockedon right now, and you can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/lockedon, expressvpn.com/lockedon to learn more. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end, people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live by. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway, right? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So, if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Damichael, we have Jaren Jackson Jr. versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. That is, again, big fight field. Let's go. I'm so fired up. If you can't hear my fists clicking together right now, it's happening, right? Yeah. Golly. Yeah. This is an exciting matchup because Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player on the planet, in my opinion. No disrespect to Steph Curry, no disrespect to Nikola Jokic or Luka Doncic. It's Giannis for me, right? He just does so much. He's just physically so much more talented, in my opinion, than just about everybody. And he uses that talent alongside an elite basketball skill that's almost impossible to stop, right? Jaren's looking like he's getting closer, right? Like Happy Gilmore style. Somebody's closer. Jaren is not too far off in terms of where he could potentially be a legitimate Giannis comparison. We know about his defense's impact. His offense continues to evolve and develop. He's using his size more. And I think as we preview this game, Damichael, Jaren versus Giannis, you still got to take Giannis. But where Jaren has gained the most ground, and we've talked about this before on the show, but it really shines through in this matchup. If Jaren has to defend Giannis, in the past, I've been worried about foul trouble, right? Because Jaren's not going to be able to handle the physicality of Giannis. I'm not so sure that's the case in this one. I think Jaren, for the first time, can at least hold his own physically against Giannis. And there's not many dudes in the NBA that can say that to the Greek Freak.
Oh man, Joe, let me tell you something before I make my point here. Before I
Ooh.
came back,
Because you're already on a heater. What's going to happen now?
before I came back to Memphis, I was working in Philadelphia, right? Philadelphia is the boxing city as well, and I covered a lot of boxing. And part of that, I covered some heavyweight boxing. And this matchup that we're talking about, it's taking me back to my days in Philadelphia. It's these two guys that have been throwing haymakers. You're looking at Jaren Jackson Jr. swatting 8 shots in a game, 3 consecutive games of 4 or more blocks. Like, are you serious? On this streak that he's on. Then you got Giannis Antetokounmpo, former Defensive Player of the Year. He's also flanked by Brook Lopez, flanked by Drew Holiday, flanked by Chris Middleton. I mean, it's good on good, it's great on great. And you mentioned it, right? The big thing with Jaren Jackson Jr., he's kind of turned it up a notch. He's fouling less, and that's a big part of his growth, right? Jaren Jackson Jr., let me go through the numbers up to this point in his career. Rookie season, 3.8 fouls per game. Second season, 4.1 fouls per game. Third season, 3.8 fouls per game. Last season, I even wrote about it a little bit last season because at one point he had, I think the number was like more blocks than fouls than fouls committed in January at a certain point. But he still averaged 3.5 fouls per game over the course of the season. So 3.5 was a career high. Right now, he's just a nudge under 3 fouls per game. 2.9 fouls per game. Joe, that's a big difference. That is a big difference. And
game changer for Jaren. Keeps him on the floor.
He hasn't even been completely unleashed yet. He's only averaging 26 minutes, but as I've said in the past, Taylor Jenkins said the goal is to get Jaren Jackson Jr. to the low 30s. Of course, the 26 minutes is kind of skewed because of the minutes restriction, that he started on as well. Let me tell you what. I only have one concern in this matchup. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. can hold his own. I think he will hold his own. The only concern, and I think anyone who watches Giannis, I think Grizzlies fans, you get frustrated sometimes when you watch Giannis because everyone does. He gets a tremendous lot of foul calls. And basically when he puts his head down and he does that Euro step and he does that spin move, your body has to be perfectly positioned to get the defensive foul. If you're
he's Shaquille O'Neal 2.0. He's Shaq.
It's utter dominance. If you're 1 inch to the right, 1 inch to the left, you're not going to get the call unless he's like out of control. And that's tough. It's tough on Jaren. You know how many free throws Giannis is averaging this season? 12,
I don't know.
12 free throw attempts per game.
Wow.
Let me put that in perspective for you. Last season, he set a career high. He averaged 11.4 free throw attempts per game last season. This guy is completely, on another level. And again, you want to put that number in more perspective. There's only 4 guys in the NBA averaging over 10 free throw attempts per game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at 10. And as we saw, the guy gets some calls. He got 19 of them against the Grizzlies in that game. Luka Doncic is averaging 10, a little over 10 as well, 10.3, 10.4 free throw attempts per game. And then, of course, Joel Embiid, who is known for the sweep move, and he's powerful. He averages about 11.9. Giannis is a hair above Joel Embiid, and, it's going to be tough. That's the one thing. It's frustrating when you watch Giannis because he's so much bigger than everyone, and he drives the ball, he puts his head down, and he gets those calls. If Jaren Jackson Jr. can stay out of foul trouble, which is a tough task for the guy because you got to think about it, he's going to challenge you so many times. Jaren Jackson Jr. can play perfect defense 23 out of 26 times in the first half. But if he gets 3 first half fouls, he's in foul trouble 23 out of 26 times. So it's a tough task, Joe. I just think that's the only thing that concerns me. But I tell you what, if Jaren Jackson Jr. can stay in the game, Giannis will have his hands full.
That's the major that's a major key, and I know we'll talk about more keys to the game here in a moment, but that's the major piece to this. If Jaren can stay on the floor against Giannis, I think the Grizzlies win. If he can't stay on the floor, I think the Grizzlies lose because Giannis, it's not like Zion, right? Zion's 6'6", 6'7", I think, something along those lines. Dylan Brooks has the same physical height and length roughly as Zion. He can hang with him. Giannis is not that animal. He's bigger. He's longer. He's taller. it's a completely different thing going against Giannis as compared to Zion. And I don't know that Dylan can do the same thing to Giannis that he did to Zion. Jaren is the one guy. He's the one when it comes to trying to hang with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I think that's the key. If Jaren can stay on the floor, I think Memphis wins. If he can't, I think the Grizzlies are going to lose. Not to put that much pressure on Jaren Jackson Jr., but he is the X factor in this game. And we'll talk about other X factors here in a moment on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Built Bar. You got to try Built Bar's new reimagined flavors. You just got to do it. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, cookie or coconut brownie topper, white chocolate peppermint granola. So many wonderful types. They have takes on the granola bar. They have Built Puffs that are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. If you haven't tried Built Bars before, they're the best tasting protein bar out there ever literally built. Revolutionizing nutrition as we know it, 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130 calories. There will be a time before you try these new Built flavors and you won't remember what your life was like before you have it. You're probably wondering which flavor is my favorite. It's unanswerable. I can't possibly answer it. They're all unbelievable. They're all different. Order a mixed box and try them all for yourself. You got to try Built. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Damichael, keys to the game. In the previous part of our show, we talked about how important it was to have Jaren Jackson Jr. stay on the floor. I think that another major key for the Grizzlies entering tonight's contest is to do their best to make sure that they get mismatches. They have to run sets. They have to be active in terms of passing, swinging the basketball, whether it's creating space in those skip passes off of dribble penetration, or whether it's just finding ways when the Bucks have different defensive coverages to get somebody like Drew Holiday off of Ja Morant, or to get somebody like Brook Lopez outside of his comfort zone beyond the paint, making him defend in space. Any way that they can try to make these guys uncomfortable in terms of how they move the ball, how they get off of screens, come off of picks, those are going to be vital pieces, because if you allow this Bucks defense to get set and do what they want to do, they are borderline unstoppable in terms of not allowing you to do what you want to do offensively. Ja Morant is the unstoppable force and the Bucks are the immovable object. But in order for him to get off and do what he needs to do, they have to find ways to create space for him, and the Bucks make that very difficult.
Yeah, there are so many ways we can talk about this game. You know, when you talk about the Bucks defense, I think they're the best at doing exactly what you just said. They're the best defense, I think, in the NBA at forcing you to take the shots they want you to take. When you think about the Boston Celtics, incredible defense, incredible individual defenders. I think when you talk about individual defenders pound for pound, no one can go out there and throw, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, and Grant Williams, and Derek White, and Malcolm Brogdon like the Celtics can. I mean, that's ferocious. But when you have Drew Holiday on the ball, and then you say, woo, okay, I got past Drew Holiday, and there's Giannis flying from the side, and then there's Brook Lopez right in front of you at the rim, you only got one shot. It's that little mid-range area, and it's the shot that Grizzlies don't like to take. And when I say don't like to take, Taylor Jenkins is encouraging the team, more three-pointers, more layups, less of the mid-range stuff. And that's kind of what the Grizzlies have kind of done most of this season. Even a guy like Dillon Brooks taking more three-pointers this season, taking a little bit less of the mid-range shot that he's taken, throughout his career. So they're going to force you into those type of opportunities. And the Grizzlies, let's be honest, the Grizzlies are stubborn in a good way. The Grizzlies will say, okay, we don't care that you have Brook Lopez and Giannis in the paint. How many times have we seen Ja Morant drive right into the chest?
Ja Morant could care less who's in the middle of the paint.
He could care less. And he's going to see Brook Lopez. He's going to say, those guys he's blocking, they can't jump like me. And he's going to go right into the chest of Brook Lopez. And he's going to see Giannis. And he's going to say, look, I tried Mitchell Robinson. Why wouldn't I try Giannis? And that's what it's, again, you put it perfect. It's this unstoppable force against this immovable object. But on the other side of the basketball, I want to throw something at you as well. We're talking about the Grizzlies on that side. The Grizzlies, I think, they're one of the teams that are uniquely positioned to do this against the Bucks. When it comes to guarding Giannis, I think you start Steven Adams on Giannis. I think you put Jaren Jackson Jr. on Brook Lopez.
Okay.
And that's not a mismatch. Usually, a lot of teams can't do that because if you guard Giannis with your center, 9 times out of 10, Brook Lopez, who's still a very skilled scorer himself, take advantage of that matchup. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not a little boy. So I just want to know what you think about this, too, because I was talking to a couple of the players. I was talking to Steven Adams about this, actually, at practice on yesterday. And we talked about one of the keys to this Bucks offense is when they bring Brook Lopez away from the basket, it kind of takes that big man away from being a help defender, which makes it easier for Giannis to go against, the one big guy who's guarding him. Plus, the help defenders are usually smaller guys. A small forward, say a Dylan Brooks or John Conchar would be the help defender in that case, which makes it easier for Giannis to score in those situations. Tell you what, the Grizzlies, if you put Steven Adams on him initially, now, there's a mobility concern there.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, this is why I want to get your opinion on it as well. This is not a for sure answer. I don't think this is the key. Like, this is the big secret to stopping the Bucks. I just think.
Are we figuring it out?
I just think this is where you start. If it doesn't work, fine. Just go switch Jaren on him and you dodged a couple fouls. But the other part of that is we've seen Steven Adams go against stretch big men this season, right? And I think if there's one area he struggled on defensively, go back to those Jazz games, right? Kelly Olynyk and Larry Markin and taking Steven Adams away from the paint, and Steven Adams, quite frankly, not going all the way out there. You remember the big game Kristaps Porzingis had against the Grizzlies? Think about those type of games where big men have kind of tried to bring Steven Adams away from the basket, and he's not really, the quickest at going out there. If you got Brook Lopez against Steven Adams, Brook Lopez is going to try to take you away from the paint a lot to create opportunities in space for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Jaren Jackson Jr., he can guard you at half court. He doesn't care. So I say, hey, you start off with that matchup. It doesn't work. Switch Jaren onto Giannis. What do you say, Joe?
I like it. And I think one of the reasons I like it is, Giannis is one of the most unstoppable forces in the entire National Basketball Association, but he has an Achilles heel. He's not a very capable 3-point shooter. He's around the 25% range from beyond the arc. And I think it allows for Steven Adams, dare I say, to play off of Giannis. Whatever steps, 2, 3, you want to give Giannis in terms of him just blowing by Steven Adams potentially, he can play off and dare Giannis to hit that shot. If Giannis Antetokounmpo is beating you by shooting 5 for 11 from 3, you tip your cap.
Yeah.
You say, hell of a job. Congratulations, Milwaukee Bucks. You're winning the NBA championship. You don't want Giannis to beat you by doing what he's the best on the planet at doing, using his size to get to the rim and either get fouled or finish at the basket, right? So I think that you're onto something there in terms of Jaren playing off, being able to be that weak side help defender, being in a spot to where, again, if Giannis is going to launch shots from beyond the arc, that's kind of what you want, similar to what Milwaukee's going to do to the Grizzlies offensively. You want Giannis to shoot that shot because Drew Holiday is a capable 3-point shooter. Chris Middleton, capable 3-point shooter. Same thing with Brook Lopez, as you alluded to. Old friend Grayson Allen is still in the mix there in Milwaukee. He obviously is a capable 3-point shooter.
Old friend Javon Carter.
Yeah, he's
having
come
a
along.
resurgence here over there.
And another really good defender, right? Like he's always been good at that. So I think that you might be onto something in terms of, the one weakness in Milwaukee is the fact that Giannis is not a perimeter threat. If you can force him to take those shots and make that be his way of doing things, then I think that's your best chance to make this game not just competitive, but to win it. I do think there's going to be times where it needs to be Jaren, end of quarters, end of game. You just, especially if he's out of foul trouble, you just put him on there and try to slow down. Because Giannis, even with all the scheming and contemplating, and if Adams plays off, essentially drop coverage. Giannis is still going to score because Giannis is the best player on the planet. If you can force him to be a perimeter-based player and make him beat you that way, I think that really might be one of your best shots. So I think you're onto something there, Damichael. And a lot of it revolves around Jaren. That front court. We talked about Steven Adams, but I just feel I think Jaren is that X factor, and that's been said for multiple years. And flipping it back to end the thought here, if Jaren can hit threes consistently, that opens up the Grizzlies' offense in such a dramatic way. But again, you don't necessarily have to respect him in that way at this moment. So if you force the Bucks to respect him, that opens up a lot of lanes on the floor for Ja Morant and others to take advantage. It's going to be a fascinating game. It's a big game. Very excited for it. Gosh, it's
so many storylines. I mean, we didn't even hit too much on Drew Holiday, who I think is the best. Some people say Marcus Smart. No, not to me. Drew Holiday is the best perimeter defender.
He's pretty darn good.
Him versus Ja, sign me up, Joe. Sign me up.
It's gonna be fun. Dillon Brooks and Chris Middleton.
That one too.
There is so much to this game that hopefully folks will tune in and watch. As we talked about throughout the show, this is a statement opportunity. And like I said, Milwaukee may not look at it this way, but I think the way that the Grizzlies handled the Hawks game, resting Ja, resting Adams, I think the Grizzlies look at it this way. I think they see this as a chance to come out on technically national television. It's NBA TV, but it's technically a national game. And they have an opportunity here to be, hey, we are here. This is the start of that tough stretch, the end of the year. I think OKC is the only team they play that's not in the play-in or playoffs the rest of the year, calendar year.
I want to add something else too. This is just some more fuel to the fire since we're just throwing gas. We're just throwing all this gas on this fire right now. The Grizzlies were the number one rebounding team 3 days ago. You know who just overlapped them? And now they're the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Grizzlies, not only is it all these matchups, I told you it's a heavyweight fight.
It's a fight.
The number one rebounding team in the NBA versus the number two rebounded team in the NBA. And it's splitting hairs. You got Steven Adams, you got Jaren Jackson Jr. We're talking about 48.9 rebounds versus 48.7.
I need to hear a lot of 3-6 Mafia up there. A lot of 3-6 blaring. I know they like NBA, Young Boy, and all that stuff. Yep. I need some 3-6 for this game. This is a 3-6 game, Damichael. I'm fired up. Yeah. Hopefully, this is a crunk game. Yes, it is. Hopefully, everybody else is as excited as we are. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Next time we're on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to be breaking down this game from every angle that we possibly can. So many storylines, so many interesting pieces. The Grizzlies are as healthy as they've been in a long time. The Bucks are as healthy as they've been in a long time. It is a clash of the NBA Titans, and it is something that I am very excited for. Damichael is very excited for it, and you get essentially a front row seat for it, Damichael. I'm happy for you, buddy. It's one of those nights that you do it for.
It's definitely so. I'm looking forward to this one. And I mean, we just hit on all the storylines. But at the end of the day, it's two of the best teams in NBA. Mm-hmm. It's two smaller markets, which just being a fan of the game, you throw everything else out of the window, just an NBA fan.
Right.
It's great to see, these teams who are winning this way. The Grizzlies through the draft, the Bucks, they go out and, they draft Giannis in the middle of the first round and they strike gold. And then you make a trade for Chris Middleton when he was, just a middle of the pack guy, and you turn him into an all-star. And then you make your big chess piece swing, you go out and get Drew Holiday. And at that point, they were already one of the top teams, in the Eastern Conference. So it's more of a credit of these are teams who didn't just go out in free agency and say, here's $200 million, sign with us. We're going into luxury tax, sign with us. I like the way these two teams were built, and it's going to be fun to watch.
It's going to be fun to watch. Make sure you're sticking with Locked On Grizzlies. Make us your first listen each and every day. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, everything that you can possibly do to help us continue to grow and develop Locked On Grizzlies is appreciated. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Enjoy the game. This is why you follow the NBA. This is why you are a fan of the Grizzlies or a fan of just basketball in general or professional sports, it's games like this. And it's just going to be a lot of fun to watch two of the very best in the National Basketball Association do battle. It's a start of a tough stretch for the Grizzlies, but we're going to know a lot more about this team 2 weeks from now, starting with tonight's game, than we do right now. And that in and of itself, as part of the journey of the season, is exciting. For Damichael Cole, I'm Joe Mullinax. Until next time, stay locked in, Grizzlies fans. This is Locked On Grizzlies.